Founding Fathers, the most prominent statesmen of America's revolutionary generation, responsible for the successful war for colonial independence from Great Britain, the liberal ideas celebrated in the Declaration of Independence, and the Republican form of government defined in the United States Constitution. While there are no agreed-upon criteria for inclusion, membership in this select group customarily requires conspicuous contributions at one or both of the foundings of the United States, during the American Revolution, when independence was won, or during the Constitutional Convention, when nationhood was achieved. Although the list of members can expand and contract in response to political pressures and ideological prejudices of the moment, the following 10, presented alphabetically, represent the gallery of greats that has stood the test of time: John Adams, Samuel Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, John Marshall, George Mason, and George Washington. There is a nearly unanimous consensus that George Washington was the foundingest father of them all. These military leaders, rebels, politicians, and writers varied in personality, status and background, but all played a part in forming a new nation and hammering out the framework for the young democracy. Without them, there would be no United States of America. The Founding Fathers, a group of predominantly wealthy plantation owners and businessmen, united 13 disparate colonies, fought for independence from Britain and penned a series of influential governing documents that steer the country to this day. All the Founding Fathers, including the first 4 U.S. presidents, at one point considered themselves British subjects. But they revolted against the restrictive rule of King George III, outlining their grievances in the Declaration of Independence, a powerful, albeit incomplete, call for freedom and equality, and won a stunning military victory over what was then the world's preeminent superpower. The founders proved equally adept later on in peacetime. When the federal government tottered under the Articles of Confederation, prominent citizens met again to hammer out the U.S. Constitution, overcoming major areas of disagreement between large and small states and southern and northern ones to form a stable political system. Showing foresight, they included a Bill of Rights, which enshrined many civil liberties into law and provided a blueprint for other emerging democracies. There's no official consensus on who should be considered a founding father, and some historians object to the term altogether. On the whole, though, it's applied to those leaders who initiated the Revolutionary War and framed the Constitution. Here are 8 of the most influential characters in America's origin story. Before he fought against the British, George Washington fought for the British, serving as a commander in the French and Indian War. A prosperous Virginia farmer who owned hundreds of enslaved people, he came to resent the various taxes and restrictions being imposed on the colonies by the British Crown. Once the Revolutionary War broke out in 1775, he was placed in charge of the Continental Army and soon suffered a near disastrous defeat at the Battle of Brooklyn. More defeats followed. All in all, Washington lost more battles than he won. Nonetheless, he kept his ragtag troops together even through a freezing winter at Valley Forge and, with the help of his French allies, was able to expel the British by 1783. Washington then returned to Virginia intent on resuming his career as a farmer. But he was persuaded to re-enter politics as head of the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, believing that a stronger federal government was needed to preserve the nation. In 1789, Washington was overwhelmingly elected the first president of the United States. He is aptly known as the father of his country. A poor orphan born out of wedlock, Alexander Hamilton emigrated as a teenager from the British West Indies to New York. Rising to prominence as an aide-de-camp to Washington during the Revolutionary War, he became an impassioned supporter of a strong central government. After attending the Constitutional Convention in 1787, he wrote the majority of the highly persuasive Federalist Papers, which argued for the Constitution's ratification. Washington then tapped him to serve as the first U.S. Treasury Secretary, a position he used to push for the creation of a national bank. Later immortalized on the $10 bill, Hamilton was killed in an 1804 duel with his bitter rival Aaron Burr, the sitting vice president. Early America's foremost Renaissance man, Benjamin Franklin was a skilled author, printer, scientist, inventor, and diplomat, despite a formal education that ended at age 10. When not designing bifocals, harnessing electricity, playing music, or publishing Poor Richard's Almanac, he worked constantly on civic projects to improve his adopted city of Philadelphia. In the beginning of the American Revolution, Franklin was appointed to the 5-member committee that drafted the Declaration of Independence. He then traveled to France, where he secured French assistance for the war effort and helped negotiate the 1783 Treaty of Paris, the official end to the conflict. Just prior to his death, Franklin served as a sort of elder statesman at the Constitutional Convention. A distinguished Massachusetts lawyer, John Adams became a relatively early proponent of the revolutionary cause. Just like Franklin, he served on the committee that wrote the Declaration of Independence, journeyed overseas to secure French military aid and helped negotiate the Treaty of Paris. He chaired other key committees as well, and even found time to draft the Massachusetts Constitution, which is still in use. After about 10 years of diplomatic service abroad, Adams returned home in 1788 and subsequently became vice president under Washington. Following Washington's 2 terms, he was then elected president, serving from 1797 to 1801. In a striking coincidence, Adams and his friend-turned-rival-turned-friend Thomas Jefferson both died on the same day, July 4, 1826, the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. The second cousin of John Adams, Samuel Adams, was a political firebrand who drummed up immense opposition to British policies in Boston, a hotbed of the resistance. Believing that the colonists were subject to taxation without representation, he joined the Sons of Liberty, an underground dissident group that at times resorted to tarring and feathering British loyalists. Adams likely planned the 1773 Boston Tea Party, and in 1775 his attempted arrest helped spark the battles of Lexington and Concord, the first skirmish of the Revolutionary War. Unlike many of the founders, Adams was staunchly anti-slavery. He signed the Declaration of Independence and went on to serve as governor of Massachusetts. Well-educated and prosperous, Thomas Jefferson was a Virginia lawyer and politician who came to believe the British Parliament held no authority over the 13 colonies. In 1776, he was given the immense task of writing the Declaration of Independence, in which he famously declared that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. A lifelong owner of enslaved people, he did not extend these concepts to black Americans. As Secretary of State under Washington, Jefferson clashed constantly with Alexander Hamilton over foreign policy and the role of government. He later served as vice president to John Adams prior to becoming president, himself, in 1801. A close friend of Jefferson's, James Madison likewise grew up on a Virginia plantation and served in the state legislature. At the 1787 Constitutional Convention, he proved to be perhaps the most influential delegate, developing a plan to divide the federal government into 3 branches: legislative, executive, and judicial, each with checks and balances on its power. This plan, which was largely adopted, earned him the moniker Father of the Constitution. Madison next co-authored the Federalist Papers and, as a U.S. congressman, became the driving force behind the Bill of Rights. He was elected president in 1808 after serving as Jefferson's Secretary of State. Not nearly as recognized as his founder cohorts, John Jay nonetheless played a pivotal role in the creation of the United States. A lawyer, he originally preferred reconciling with Britain rather than fighting for independence. Once war broke out, however, he wholeheartedly joined the side of the colonists, serving, among other roles, as a diplomat to Spain and linking up with Franklin and Adams to negotiate the Treaty of Paris. Upon returning to the United States, Jay served as Secretary of Foreign Affairs under the Articles of Confederation and authored a few of the Federalist Papers. In 1789, he became the first Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, and 6 years later he was elected Governor of New York. Many other figures have also been cited as founding fathers, or mothers. These include John Hancock, best known for his flashy signature on the Declaration of Independence, Gouverneur Morris, who wrote much of the Constitution, Thomas Paine, the British-born author of Common Sense, Paul Revere, a Boston silversmith whose midnight ride warned of approaching redcoats, George Mason, who helped craft the Constitution but ultimately refused to sign it, Charles Carroll, the lone Catholic to sign the Declaration of Independence, Patrick Henry, who famously declared "Give me liberty, or give me death," John Marshall, a Revolutionary War veteran and longtime Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and Abigail Adams, who implored her husband, John, to remember the ladies while shaping the new country. The Founding Fathers are the men who created our government and forged our new nation. These 7 men are the principal Founding Fathers: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison. While there were many others who contributed to the founding of the United States, these 7 are considered by most as the Founding Fathers. They all played key roles in the securing of American independence from Great Britain and in the creation of the government of the United States of America. There are many others who are considered Founding Fathers. While the principal 7 contributed immensely to the founding, there are dozens of others who played smaller but valuable roles. George Mason, Patrick Henry, John Hancock, John Marshall, and Samuel Adams are some of those, just to name a few. There were 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence and 39 signers of the United States Constitution. In addition to men, women also played important roles, such as Abigail Adams and Mercy Otis Warren. Each Founding Father offered unique contributions to the creation of the Republic. While the contributions of men like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson are more well known, the writings, thoughts, and actions of numerous others influenced the ultimate shape of our nation. Some thought, some wrote, some fought, and some served in public office, but all of them contributed in some way. The Founding Fathers are the most important people to study to gain an understanding of the American ideals of freedom and liberty. The lives of these men are essential to understanding the American form of government and our ideals of liberty. The Founding Fathers were able to do what had only been dreamed of in Europe. How they accomplished what they did is essential in the study of American history and in understanding the global and timeless impacts of their work. While they all played important roles, the Founding Fathers often disagreed with each other. The Founding Fathers are often viewed as largely in agreement and are often referred to as a single entity that all worked together to create one American nation. In reality, they had extremely different views on all sorts of issues, including the role of the federal government, the issue of slavery, and how radical or moderate the American Revolution should be. At times, these differences of opinion destroyed friendships and threatened to pull the country apart. Most of the Founding Fathers were young men when they created the nation. Often viewed as old men with white wigs and false teeth, many of the Founding Fathers were quite young when they helped create the country. George Washington was 43 years old when he accepted command of the American Army during the war. Thomas Jefferson was 33 years old when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. John Adams was 40 years old when he argued for American independence. James Madison was 36 years old when he was at the Constitutional Convention. John Jay was 43 years old when he became the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Alexander Hamilton was 33 years old when he was made Secretary of the Treasury. The oldest was Benjamin Franklin, who was 70 years old at the Second Continental Congress. The phrase Founding Fathers was popularized by Warren G. Harding. Now a commonly used phrase, the term did not appear widely until after the 29th President of the United States, Warren G. Harding, began using it in many of his speeches in the late 1910s and early 1920s. Many of the Founding Fathers feared following generations might not be capable of maintaining American liberty. Like other generations, many of the founders were unsure if succeeding generations would be up to the task of protecting the liberty they had successfully secured. When Benjamin Franklin was asked after signing the Constitution if they had created a monarchy or a republic, Franklin replied, "A republic, if you can keep it." The Founding Fathers were not perfect. While the founders created a form of government unlike any other in the world of that time, they were far from perfect people. Nearly half of them were slaveholders and all of them profited from the system of slavery in the United States. The nation they created ensured that the rights of white, property-owning men were protected, but it would take almost 200 years to ensure that all Americans were provided those same protections. The Founding Fathers left an unparalleled legacy in world history. Perhaps more than any other group of people in history, this small group of men distilled years of Enlightenment thought into a form of government that sought to restrict central power, protect the rights of the citizens, and ensure the consent of the governed. To achieve this, they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. These ideals they put into action we still believe to this day. God bless America and thank you for watching.